Yes, I think so.
Well, I think let's get started. For everybody here already, welcome to our first session discussing topics relevant to our new world, the fourth industrial revolution. It's been called the biggest test of our time. For you that don't know me, I'm JP. I'm a husband, father, entrepreneur, small business owner, and for the first time in my life, I actually have something that resembles a bit of a beard. I understand I've got 2 weeks left before I'm allowed to shave. To our live audience, to those that's watching the recording, we hope to add some value in the coming days and weeks by bringing specialists into your home. We hope that we can assist and they can assist in helping us and all of us interpret and plan and teach and assist in navigating the future. Topic number one, I think, is extremely relevant in the current space. All of us, every single one of us knows people that's going through this. A lot of us sitting facing this possible reality. So we'll be discussing getting real about retrenchment, the new normal for employees, employers, and just the general environment that we are dealing with. Our panelists today, I want to welcome Stephen Levy, business coach, Valdette Stoffberg from Glacier, business development manager, Mr. Henny Bredenkamp, employment consultant, and Conrad Koorts, the CVP, whether he's a CVP, senior financial planner. The topics we want to discuss today is just the emotional implications of the environment, the regulatory framework that can be confusing and complex, and having to do it in such a short space of time, very difficult. And some practical steps in your own home, some practical steps in terms of investments and making tough decisions. So during the session, if there's any questions, please use the comment facility. We will look at the comment facility afterwards and we'll answer each of your questions. It's my pleasure to introduce to you somebody that I can also call a personal friend, Stephen Levy. He's a business personal coach, a man that has had life experiences as being a business owner, being a leader, being a coach. One of the main elements I think that Stephen can also bring to the table, he's got a wide client base. He's been actively involved in each of those businesses, assisting, discussing, and understanding on how to tackle these challenges head on. Stephen, welcome. We sit in some seriously trying times. There's some tough questions that we have to ask, and both on a personal and professional level. And, you know, some comments. How do we approach this?
Thanks. So thank you for the introduction, and thanks to yourself and Conrad for including me in this presentation of yours. It really is a great honor and a privilege to be able to just share things. And I just want to, at the outset, JP, just make it clear that as a coach, and for those people listening, that I'm not a therapist, a psychologist, or a counselor. Okay, and I'm not going to find employment for those people who have maybe sadly been retrenched. But I'm actually more here to provide answers on this platform, to share some of my, I'm going to share some of my own challenges that I've had to face on my journey, what informs me as a coach. And it really is my hope today that I can inspire others to hopefully prepare themselves during this time to take action, and that they can give themselves the highest probability of coming out of this situation stronger than they went into it, because I truly believe that things are going to be different, and we need to accept that.
Yeah, we had a discussion yesterday, and you used the word acceptance, I think, very strongly, is that is probably the first element. And for those that don't know, we use Stephen as a business coach, and one of the main things that we identified in our own business is accepting And after accepting, we sort of discuss and say, but what are the choices that we have, Stephen?
Yeah, I think, that before we get to the choices, there is one thing, and I want to just elaborate on the acceptance that we spoke about.
Yeah.
And I think yesterday we also mentioned the word allowing.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important to understand that this change that we're currently going through during this crisis, there will be emotions. We're going to have emotions. To fight them, I think, would be a huge mistake. We need to realize maybe this change is making us realize that we're not bulletproof. We people, we have emotions, and actually to allow ourselves the freedom and the space to feel that emotional stress, and whatever that emotional stress is for each one of us. So it could be fear, it could be being upset, it could be anger, it could even and hopefully not lead to depression. And I don't say that lightly because I myself have been there, and it's not a pretty place to be. But we are, after all, human, and we all react to extreme challenges in our own way. So I think more importantly than anything else is, before we make the choices, is to be aware of these emotions and then trying to figure out how do we manage them as opposed to fighting them.
Mm-hmm. I hear what you're saying. I had a conversation with one of our team members earlier this morning, and again, the comment that you're raising, the feedback that I got was just the ups and the downs, the feeling of getting control and then possibly losing control, and not having all my eggs in my own control. So and from there the choice, and we again discussed the decision that we've got to make. We basically, as you put it, got one out of two sort of views on taking it.
Yeah, well, I think the choices, JP, that we have, and the one lesson that I learned is that we need to move forward, and it's not so much about what's happened, it's about how we respond to it, what's happened, because that's 100% in our control. And if I look at the two choices, it really comes down to two simple choices, is that we can just keep simply plowing through it, plowing through this avalanche and get buried in the depths of it, or we can focus our attention on how best to survive the immediate impact of this avalanche, and be more prepared and stronger and ready to move on when this does come to pass. And that I'm sure it will, I just don't know when.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, please go ahead.
So maybe the question we need to be asking ourselves out of those two choices is which one best serves me and those around me. We mustn't forget the people around us. Sorry, not me.
And you're referring to family, friends, and people dependent?
I think, yeah, family, friends, people that we work with. Everybody. We have an impact on everybody that we meet, positive or negative.
Yes. Something that we've implemented through also our involvement with you, and something that we're actively championing within our bigger team. There's a lot of confusion on what am I supposed to be doing during the day, and through your coaching, we've learned to forget about tomorrow, not in the sense of the problem and it's not there, but the focus is to have a green tick today, to do something and to keep ourselves busy with activities to ensure that at the end of the day, we felt like we did some positive, we've had some positive interaction either with clients or individuals or family. So that, I think, is the choice that you're referring to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Comments on resources. How if I'm probably, if I struggle with the emotional stress, if I struggle with the environment we currently face, what type of resources do I look for? Where do I try and find energy?
I love that question because we actually have access. We all have access to the greatest resource available to us, and it doesn't cost us a cent. So now I can go. No. So here's something for free. The greatest resource that we have available to us is ourselves, because that's the one thing we're 100% in control of.
Mm.
And I think we've never really tested to the limit our will to survive. I don't think we realize that will to survive, how strong it is. And we actually are more than what we think. We've just never been nudged into that position of we've been, I'm sure we've all faced challenges, but we certainly have the ability to push ourselves beyond what we actually believe we're capable of. And I learned that through individual sport, certainly through ultra marathons, where I ran distances I didn't think I'd be capable of. And I think the first thing is to, during this time, because it's a trying time for us all, is to be able to shift our focus from the current situation, from the crisis, shift the focus into how do we prepare ourselves when we come out of it.
Yeah.
The other
Another thing.
Okay.
Yeah, please proceed.
No, there's a couple of things that I've given thought to just through my own experiences in terms of the resources. So one is ourselves, and I think we need to take, and it takes a bit of courage, because we've got to go dig deep and discover kind of the uniqueness of who we are, and that requires sometimes facing our own truths, and that's a tough one. When we start reflecting on our own life's journey, but I think not to go in and bash ourselves, but rather at this time is to recognize what we've accomplished to date, because we tend to forget that. And I'm sure that everybody sitting on this call or attending this Zoom call or session, I'm sure everybody's faced challenges. This is not the first challenge that we faced in our lives. Probably just the different level of the challenge that we're facing, yes. But just reflect back on what we've accomplished to date and the challenges that you've overcome could give you maybe create a positiveness or give you a little bit of assurance that you actually have the wherewithal to overcome it. So the other thing is reflection. Is, do we take the time to reflect on exactly what I've spoken about? And it's just amazing for me, and I include myself in this, in how the rush and the insane pace that we live at today, we tend to forget those moments. And as I said, you've probably been through those challenges. So take the time to reflect and what happened in those challenges and what worked for you. And you clearly survived them because you're all sitting here today. So you can't say me that you don't have the wherewithal. The big thing that came up for me was to list things that we're grateful for. It was like maybe gratitude is a great resource. Write down the list of things that we're grateful for, because in the rush of our daily lives, we tend to forget about those as well. We keep looking for what we want, but not what we have. And I think Conrad actually posted on LinkedIn a week or two ago, if I'm not mistaken, and he raised the question, what have you been, during this lockdown, what have you been missing? And it was an awesome question because it certainly made me think. And I had to sit back and think about that question that he asked. And how do I answer him? And the one thing that came to mind is that I thought, actually, you know what I'm missing? I'm missing what I have. I've kind of run by it, and so we have to dig deep into ourselves. And I think the other thing is, besides reflection, is especially in this time, but even outside of it, is asking for help. We need to learn for ourselves. We don't have to travel this journey alone. Yeah. So, because if you travel it alone, you can get into a bad space. I've been through there in 2012, and I'll share this with you. It doesn't bother me. Maybe it's because I didn't go through Firebird Blue Star. I invested money with someone who clearly doesn't have the same live to the same, create something that matters that you guys do. In fact, I think it was the opposite. So he didn't care. But anyway, irrespective, I lost it all. And I got into a depressive state. And I went a bit, not a bit, I went downhill feeling sorry for myself. And I looked at, looking at asking questions, what's the world done to me? But then it took one day, just when I was sitting in my lounge and feeling sorry for Stephen, looking at my kids in the eye, and I thought to myself, wow, that was really a moment where I thought, you know what, Stephen, you better pull your finger out, your proverbial what, and I better get my proverbial other stuff together. And I said to myself, you better move forward.
Yeah.
And it was that day that I actually got up and I asked for help. I actually phoned a psychologist and I asked for help, and it was probably the best thing that I could ever have done. So, contrary to popular belief, and especially here in South Africa, where we've got to be this, as I think I used it earlier, we've got to be bulletproof. We're allowed to ask for help. We don't have to prove to anybody how tough we are, that we can get through this on our own. It's not a competition, and I can assure you there are no prizes to collect in this event. In fact, it's not an event, it's a journey. Yeah. So who do we ask? Our friends, our families, those people that you referred to earlier.
Stephen, I think I can vouch for just the value that coaching and speaking to somebody else and having that point of call and that reference point. I think one of the main things that coaching and how coaching can guide any individual in this space is just the structure that it brings to your thinking. So Stephen, I want to thank you for your involvement. I know Henny is chomping at the bit. So I want to move over to Henny Bredenkamp, Labour Relations Advisor. Now Henny, welcome. You are one of the most experienced chairpersons of disciplinary and incapacity hearings in South Africa. If I understand correctly, you've had over 900 hearings for corporate entities, and you've got an in-depth knowledge of the systems in terms of employers, employees, regulation. I thank you for your time, and we look forward to your input.
Okay. Thank you, JP. As an introduction to what I want to put forward, there's two important comments I just want to make in terms of the Labour Relations Act. The Act is, the point of departure of the Act is fairness. The Labour Relations Act, the base of the Labour Relations Act is to establish and maintain fairness in the workplace. That is one important aspect. The other important aspect is that the Labour Relations Act protects the right of employees, but it also acknowledges the rights of employers. There's in the marketplace an understanding or a point of departure that the CCMA and the Labour Relations Act is only there for employees. It's not true. It also protects the rights of employers, and that's quite important. The new normal, we're speaking about a new normal retrenchment. The retrenchment is a kind of dismissal. Now, the Labour Relations Act, just quickly, in theory, it says there are three fair reasons for dismissal, which one is misconduct, other one is incapacity, that's underperformance and ill health, and the third one is company operational requirements. Now, under the latter one, company operational requirements, that is where retrenchment will fit in. With the current situation, and retrenchment will always fit in under company operational requirements. It cannot fit in any of the misconduct or incapacity categories. With the lockdown situation we have at the moment, I'm very sure that we are heading to a company operational requirement situation in any business, large, small, informal, formal, whatever. There's going to be a situation where company operational requirements are going to distinguish what we're going to do going forward. There's two scenarios that can come up. After lockdown, there's two scenarios can come up. The one is Close down, the other one is size down. Now, close down is a situation where the company is, whether it's big or small, is gone completely bankrupt. The company can just simply inform the employees in writing and say, guys, sorry, there's no money. Lockdown was too long, or whatever the reason is. And he can provide financial statements to confirm that to the employees and close down the business. Just quick an example, 10 years ago, my daughter-in-law worked for a company in Cape Town, which manufactures ladies' lingerie for Woolworths. They went on a December leave. January, they came back. The company said, sorry, guys, Woolworths cancelled the contract with us. They are now going to import lingerie from China. So we don't have a backup contract, which was pretty bad from the company point of view. And 438 people were out of job. Just like that is going to happen after lockdown. There's no retrenchment in that situation because there's no money in that situation. Size down is the one where retrenchment will come in, and that should be the management or the company will decide, guys, we have 30 people in service, we can only afford 20. So now we have to retrench 10 people. But the Labour Relations Act focuses mostly on what the employer must do. There is a huge responsibility on the employer to handle any retrenchment according to strict specifications by the Labour Act. And the first thing I want to confirm and to emphasize is that retrenchment is the process of consultation. There's no one-way communication in retrenchment. The employer is bound to a process, and the scope of that consultation is enormous. I just want to quickly refer to what the labour law says about this consultation. It says that the employer should consult with, if there's a collective agreement in place, whether there's a workplace forum in place or a trade union in place, and if none of those, you have to consult with the employee or the employee representative. Then the law goes further and it says, a meaningful joint concession-seeking process, this is as the law is most written like this, very formally and strictly, must be entered into. And then I'm going to read a few of these for you just to give you an idea of the complexity of this consultation. Consensus-seeking meeting to agree on the following measures: to avoid dismissals, to minimize the number of dismissals, to change the timing of the dismissals, to mitigate the adverse effects of the dismissals, the method of selecting the employees to be dismissed, and the severance pay for dismissed employees. And then it's very important, it says the employer must issue a written notice inviting the other consulting party, that's now the employee, to consult with it and disclose in writing all relevant information, including but not limited to A, the reasons for the proposed dismissals, B, the alternatives the employer considered before proposing dismissals, and the reasons for rejecting each of those, the number of employees likely to be affected and the job categories in which they are employed, the proposed method of selecting which employees to dismiss, the time when and the period during which dismissal are likely to take effect, the severance pay proposed, any assistance that the employer proposes to offer to the employees likely to be dismissed. The list goes on. And then it concludes by saying the employer must allow the other consulting party, that's now the employees, opportunity during consultation to make representations and on any matter dealt with in the subsections previously. And then it says that the employer must consider and respond to the representations made by the other party. And if the employer disagrees, the employer must state the reason for disagreeing. This regulations allows the employee a lot of space in which it can challenge the employer when the employer declares a dispute in terms of in terms of the consultation. So the consultation has to happen. Timelines in terms of the consultation is very important. I read 2 articles the past week on the SA Labour Guide website, where the one author of one article says the consultation process normally takes 2 to 3 weeks. To my judgment, that's a very optimistic view. It takes much longer than that normally. The other writer specifically refers to the fact that as the law is at the moment, this consultation process can take up to 60 days. 60 days is the maximum, then it must be done. The challenge for the employer will be to negotiate with the employee that we do not go 60 days, because after the lockdown period and the new normal steps in, whatever the new normal will be, the employee is going to actively try to stretch that up to the 60 days. Why? Because he's in service all the time and he gets paid. And with the situation that we envisage, the employer is probably not going to have the money to keep him in service. So negotiating the timeline is absolutely important. And I know it's a difficult one to call, but the employer must maybe just get somebody, a specialist in the place, in the business and in this field, to just lead him a bit in terms of what is going to be fair. I think 2 to 3 weeks is very optimistic. It depends on the size of the business. If there are 60 or 100 or more people in the business, negotiating with all of them, it's going to take longer. If there are 5 or 10 people and you're going to terminate three people, it's going to go, but the maximum is 60 days. And I think it's important that employers take note that negotiate timelines, and the employee take note you are allowed to stretch it up to 60 days. I mean, I'm just saying that tongue in the kiss, tongue in the cheek, tongue in the kiss, tongue in the kiss. If timelines are done, selection criteria is also important. I'm a little bit rushing now. I'm trying to keep to my 10 minutes. How will the employer choose? And the law specifically says, I read it to you earlier, that the criteria on which people are going to be dismissed needs to be made clear in the beginning. It needs to be in this letter of notification. Selection criteria is normally a length of service, skills applicable to the business, qualifications applicable to the business. Those are the normal ones. There's another one as a general criteria, the LIFO, last in, first out principle, is mostly applied, and it does go in the labor law. It goes off as a good, solid criteria. Last in, first out. So people that came in last, they are going to go first out. But you could have a youngster that came in 6 months ago, is absolutely a bright star, and then you need to spread the criteria a little bit to include that person. Otherwise, the LIFO principle will kick him out, although you maybe need him in your business. Okay. Caution. I always say caution is very important. Employees have specific rights. The employees do have access to the CCMA if their contracts of employment is terminated on the grounds of company operational requirements leading to retrenchment where due process had not been followed. The CCMA looks at substantive fairness and procedural fairness in any decision. The substantive fairness is there. The business can no longer afford these 10 personnel, you can only afford 5. And please, just a footnote, remember, the employer cannot simply call in the people one day and say, listen, we haven't been making enough money, so I can't afford all 10 of you, I can only afford 5 of you. The employee is going to jump up and say, please prove that. And that proof is going to have to be given to the employee. It's the first point of departure. The employer will have to prove that it has a financial crisis or financial predicament. You cannot just announce it. Fact of the matter is, they have access to the CCMA, and they will take you to the CCMA in terms of procedural fairness and not in terms of substantive fairness, because those two need to be proved. But in summary, I think I've forgotten one or two of my notes probably, but in summary, from the perspective of the Labour Relations Act, tread carefully in the process of retrenchment. I can say that to employers especially, but also to employees. But all is not doom and gloom. The fact of the matter is that retrenchment is a restructuring with consequential retrenchment is a legit legal process supported by the Labour Relations Act in cases of company operational requirements, where company operational requirements forces an employer into drastic actions concerning the business. It can be done. Retrenchment can be done. The law acknowledges retrenchment. That's about it. Good luck to employees. Good luck to employers and employees.
Thank you, Henny. Before we move on to the next speaker, I think the message, and you can confirm that I'm hearing is, one is that the Labour Relations Act has not disappeared and did not contract COVID. So no. It still applies in the views of the employees. So you still have rights. You still need to be treated fairly. And from an employer's perspective, many of us and many of our clients are having to make fast and quick decisions. I think the message that you are presenting is to take the time to consider those decisions, especially in terms of employees, because the implications could be that when this disaster is over, then you are stuck with a new disaster where you are having to constantly prove why the decisions was made that you made, and that can have long-term effects.
That's 100%. You've been listening.
Now, it doesn't happen often, but it does happen.
That's 100%.
Yep. Then we move over just a bit more on the practical and on the personal side. All of us have been listening to the news. All of us have started taking making some precautionary measures, some of us more than others. Our next speaker, Conrad Kurtz, again, a personal friend of mine, a man that looks better with a beard than I do, certified financial planner, somebody whose ethics is above reproach and who's extremely technical in financial planning. Financial planning for him is a career. He's been doing this for a very long time. Conrad, welcome, and thank you also for your time.
Thank you very much, JP. And hi there to all the listeners.
I'll say on their behalf, hi there, Conrad. So general comments. So the topic you're discussing is, practical things. What's your immediate response? What is it that we can do?
Maybe if I have to tie into what Henny said, and I really like this saying or comment that he made, not all is doom and gloom. I really like that, and that's actually true. Part of what Stephen also said is, he said one of our biggest resources is ourselves. And I think while we're sitting now and we're sitting in lockdown, we can inevitably prepare to some sort of this. So, a few general things that you can look at is getting your CV ready, making sure that your CV is ready in the event that something can happen. Don't think about the negative necessarily, but the action you can take. For instance, join LinkedIn if you're not on it. Get your profile ready. Go and look for that beautiful profile photo. Just look at Valdette. He's ready for redeployment. No, Valdette, please stay where you are. Connect with the companies on LinkedIn digitally. So if you want to come work for Sunloam, connect with them. Have a chat. See what they're doing. Register on job sites. Start honing into new skills that you can develop that companies will look for when it comes to they have to retrench or restructure. And then maybe just practical, when it does happen to you, like Stephen said, I believe one of the biggest things that you can do is talk to the people close to you. You know, they are the people that's going to be there for you. So connect with your family, connect with your friends. You never know what your networks actually have, and start working on that network. So that's a few general points that I would get.
Brilliant. Thank you, Conrad. I think as you mentioned, connecting with people and taking care of yourself. Wouldn't you agree that that would just be priority number one? And by taking care of yourself, we are referring to learning new skills, making sure you upskill yourself, however basic that might be.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. There's quite a few portals out there where you can do short courses that takes literally a little bit of money, and you would be able to actually look at a few things and actually check that. So that really does look good. On that point, I think it's also understanding where you are financially and the timeline if something were to happen right now. There's a lot of things that's unsure at the moment. Timelines are looking towards September, but reactions can take 18 months. We don't know. That's a lot of doom and gloom right there. But that uncertainty, you need to understand, comprehend, and then make a plan of action. What is it that you're going to do for a plan of action for yourself, both on general aspects and then also on financial aspects?
Commenting on the financial aspects, I'm an employee, or I was an employee. I have now been instructed that 50% of my salary will be cut. How do I approach that? What are the things that I then do?
You know, one of the things that the terms that I hate is a budget. My dad never had one. I love him dearly. But I like the term spending plan, because all of us spend. We like to spend. So if we can understand that we can spend our money, but just spend it wisely, then that will be a great thing to start. So understanding your spending plan. And when I'm saying a spending plan, I'm referring to your patterns. So as a financial planner, I sit with a lot of my clients and we go through the patterns of spending, not just drawing up a budget that you think of, but actually taking your bank statements, looking 3 months back and drawing up a spending plan of what you're currently doing. And then you can go and revisit that and see what can you cut on? What options do you have? I mean, I can probably go here now and identify a lot of different type of mitigation options that's available to you. Thinking of how you can save on tax is always a big thing. What options of relief is there that you can get from banks, school, providers that you normally use? All of the companies out there is currently looking at how they're going to survive and keep their customers. So they're willing to negotiate to some point. And proactively looking at that will definitely aid you in surviving this period.
Conrad, 2 comments. The first comment in terms of spending patterns, I think we have to as individuals realize that our spending patterns has changed. And we have to take the time to just assess and understand that. It's almost similar to the emotional side. And in terms of understanding, is I haven't spent a cent on fuel in the last 21 days. Have I considered the fact? You're also referring to negotiating upfront, contacting the bank. We had a session yesterday where it's been said clear, and you mentioned the fact that the banks cannot afford to lose their clients, so they're willing to negotiate. And I think it's very important, if you are renting, if you have debt, if you have school fees, is to actively and proactively contact the decision makers on that.
I totally agree. Just on the point, and I'm not aiming this necessarily on the banks, if there's one concern I would just have to say is just be very cognizant of short-term loans. Going into loans now can actually be so detrimental to your future. I mean, we can talk about various aspects, and I believe we'll need to have another webinar to actually get to that point. And I can see Valdette smiling already, but that will allude to her topic. The point is, if we understand how loans work and the dynamic of it, it's sometimes to our aid, but most of the times it's actually to a negative, detrimental point to ourselves. So very careful of what we do there, and that will definitely also be one of those.
Conrad, if I can just ask, you're mentioning loans. I've got a bond. Are you referring to my bond, or are you referring to a 50,000 Rand loan at company X that's got interest plus 5%?
No, the latter, definitely the latter. So your bond is the thing you have to carry for your asset. So if you were to now need money to survive, I will be very careful for going to a institution and borrowing money at an extremely high rate or extreme high cost. So be cognizant of the type of loan you're going to do, and rather ask for opinion, ask your networks, ask professionals, and make sure that you ask and get understanding of what it actually will entail, because it may sound good, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is.
Yeah. Any other points that you've identified?
Well, JP, I believe there's quite a bunch of different items that we can look at. Looking at just in our field of insurance, all the insurance companies currently have different types of premium holidays available to the clients. Forms and ways that they can look at their short-term insurance. Medical aids, I know the CMA is currently looking at how they will be able to provide clients with options, whether that be paying your premium from your savings account in your medical aid or not. So there's different types of things that you're going to do. And I want to suggest there that you contact your CFP or your financial planner and really sit down and take that few minutes, that few time that you do have, although the kids are running around you, and just go back to that, revisit, and make sure that stuff is ready. Maybe one item that most people are not looking at, and that I'm really trying to also look at all my clients for at this current stage, is revisiting their wills. Making sure their wills and their trust are in place and doing what they needed to be done. Even though it's just a check, you don't need to have to change anything. That check is very, very valid.
Yes, I agree with you. You mentioned sit down with clients. Does that mean you're going to break the lockdown, or what's your
No, so as you can see, we're currently on Zoom, and I know we at Fiber Booster have been online since lockdown, and we're fully we are at full capacity to be able to assist clients online currently while the lockdown is still in place.
Brilliant. Thanks. So your message then, Conrad, is that again, assess your situation, communicate with the relevant specialists, don't only implement strategies that will solve and provide relief in the next 21 days necessarily, but make sure you also assess the risk and the implications going forward 2021 and beyond.
Yes.
Brilliant. Conrad, I thank you. I then welcome Valdette. She's a business development manager at Glacier. She's been with Glacier for 21 years. She's a Cape Town native, has a BA degree in political science and sociology. That's why we get along so well, from the University of Stellenbosch. Postgraduate, also CFP financial planner. A philosophy on financial services is that it's always about the end client, and therefore need to promote the behavior that embodies honesty and integrity. And she believes that all the experience are something that we can learn from, even the bad ones. And she's got a passion for educating advisors and clients. Valdette, thank you. Nice having you here.
Thanks, JP. So,
now?
Yeah. So I was listening to the other speakers, and I think I was thinking to myself, one of the things that I would like to summarize what all the other speakers have said previously is that I think the decisions you make at the moment is all about balance, because it's balance on your current needs, because whatever choices you make at the moment for your current needs will have impact on your future situation. So we need to very seriously think about how we're going to balance the decisions we currently make. And that's quite important, and you need specialists around you to assist with that.
Yeah, you're referring, and during a retrenchment process or a change of occupation, a lot of our clients and people, we have to make decisions on pension funds, provident funds, what to do and what not to do. At this point, I think it might be very attractive to just take the money and put it in my bank account. Your view on that?
That's a difficult decision, because I think if you just take the money and put it in your bank account, you can have quite a bit of a tax liability that will be deducted from that lump sum. So in essence, if you now faced with a retrenchment situation, you've got three options that you can consider. The first option would be, as you said, take the money, pay the tax, and put it into your bank account. But the implication of that could be quite a big tax bill. The second option would be to say, speak to your financial planner or your CFP, and then decide to rather transfer the money into a recognized pension or provident fund. And you're allowed certain access before you transfer the money and after you've transferred the money. But that you can speak to your financial planner about. The third option is where the balance comes in for me, is you're allowed to take a portion because you might have certain needs that need addressing right now. And this is the only source that you can have access to. But the balance would be to only use the capital that you really need for those needs and still transfer the rest to a preservation fund so that you can keep on getting growth on that money for your later retirement. So that would in essence be your three options.
So if I understand you correctly, I've just been retrenched, I've got X amount in my pension or provident fund. I would be able to sit down with somebody and do a calculation and take a position to say, well, let's ensure I have income till January 2021, and therefore we withdraw 200,000 Rand. The rest is then transferred to a preservation fund. And if the situation changes and I have to access that money again, I can.
You're allowed one more access before the age of 55, but of course it's taxable. And that
Yes.
sort of leads into the second part of our discussion as to there are things that one needs to be careful of. And one of the things that you need to be careful of is the fact that when it comes to legislation, you've got very specific things in place and you need somebody to guide you there. So let's take an example, for instance. If you take the 200,000 upfront, as you mentioned now, from the fund, and you transfer the rest to a preservation fund, you can make another withdrawal. But just remember, the tax will count on from there. So it can be that the tax can be a little bit more severe, and you need to take that into account. Also, it has an implication when you make a further withdrawal, because you then have less money that will eventually have to supply you with an income when you do retire. So that's very important to be careful of legislation. Firstly, you need to have advice on that. And secondly, the possible future tax implications and income implications.
Yes. And you actually answered one of the next questions that I had in my mind. The timing of this obviously also being very important. If I'm a 31-year-old with a bright future ahead of me versus being 56 years old and in effect having my retirement moved forward by 6 or 7 years, the decisions would obviously be quite different.
It would most definitely be different. If you're the 56-year-old, it's possible for you to already retire, but then you need to go and look at what kind of products can I utilize to make sure that I have a sustainable income going forward. And that means not only looking to a living annuity, but also looking more to your traditional life annuity type of products that can give you a sustainable income going forward. That's why it's so important that you do speak to the relevant people and get the right advice.
Perfect. Last question from my side, Valdette. The world's a bit crazy at the moment. Shouldn't I just put the money under the bed?
Oh, that's a good question. I think most of us have been considering it. Some of the other questions I get is, shouldn't I be buying gold? And I always say no. You need to look at your plan and have a balanced approach. Everything is not always on the high or on the low. You need to have a structure and a proper process. So I always say that when you're looking at your money, you need to make sure that you plan your investment. It's not just, I'm going to put everything in equities and I want to use it in a 2-year period of time. That's not going to work out. You need to plan your investments. You need to sit with your financial planner and say, all right, I'm going to have certain short-term needs, and I'm going to put that money that I need in the short term, which might be 3 years and less, into a certain pool of money, which is low risk, and which I have easy access to. But the rest I need to invest, because inflation will always be part of something in South Africa. We're not somewhere like in Europe where you have a negative inflation situation possibly. We have real inflation, and you need to take certain steps and put it in place to make sure that you have practical investment assets that will aim to outperform inflation over the long term. Otherwise, in real terms, we're just going to get poorer. We need to make sure that we invest for that as well. So if you put your money under the mattress, you're definitely not going to make sure that your money grows with inflation.
The other problem is my wife knows where the mattress is, so I'll come to you, definitely.
True, that's true as well.
I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Please, and we'll quickly look at the questions now, but if there's topics that's top of mind, please share them with us. If there's content that you feel you need more information on, make us aware of that, and we will find the necessary specialists. As you can see on the screen, send us an email, send us a question, and we'll gladly look at that content. And let me just look here. I see there's some questions coming through. The key thing I think for us is to be actively involved with the people within our network, and to find ways to add value during this time. One of our next topics is going to be, should I be investing or should I be paying my bond with the low interest rates and the projected interest rates and not taking a position on it? I think it's an interesting topic piece that we'll also look at. Our question is guided at Stephen. Mr. Levy, you still there? Question directed at you. Should we not maybe try and use this experience that we are going through now to do a self-evaluation or evaluation of our business and try to use this in a positive light to move forward?
Yeah, it's a good question, JP. And yeah, I think in answer to that, as I stated earlier, we need to look at what's in our control and what's not, and we need to focus on what we can control. I think on the self-evaluation, I did allude to that. So it really is. I mean, there's no better time to go inside. And I'm not just talking inside our houses. We have to do that. We need to go inside ourselves and go and do that self-evaluation. Go and figure out what worked, what didn't work. What am I good at? You know, I think we've been brought up in a society where we tend to focus a lot on what we're not good at. It keeps getting pointed to us through our school days and further on. Let's rather work on what we're good at and build on that, especially during these times. In terms of our business, I had this discussion with a client of mine yesterday. Has the purpose of our business changed during COVID? No, it hasn't changed. What might change and what we really need to look at now is how are we going to achieve that purpose? That might be different to how we were working before. And I think those are the areas that we need to focus on and actually start implementing now. We don't have to wait until the end. Let's prepare. There's a word that comes out, be prepared. Prepare yourself for what lies ahead. And that's all in a positive light.
Yeah.
What are we good at?
Thank you, Stephen. Question for Valdette. Valdette, should we be investing in any shares at this point?
That's a very good question. I think there's quite a couple of good opportunities out there. The issue is how do you identify which companies are actually good companies to invest in at the moment and which companies might have certain cash flow problems going forward. And that's why I do prefer the approach where we make use of our Glacier Invest platform, where we have the actual fund managers and manage them on a regular basis. We sit in quarterly meetings where they make the decision for you. They have access to all the information and they can make the right choices in terms of selecting the appropriate shares which they hold in their funds. It's like, for me, making a decision on how am I going to sell my house if I have no idea how to be a property broker. I think you should have the right person help you select the right shares because it can be a minefield out there. I know markets have come down. There are good opportunities, but how do you identify the really good share opportunity from that which is just looking cheap because it is actually cheap?
I agree. So we won't be buying Sasol at this point. That's basically what we said.
Yeah. Well, no comment on that one, but yeah, I think we've seen quite a bit of a jump in Sasol already.
Okay. Another interesting fact, I see that Mr. Amazon just got 24 billion rand richer in the last 2.5 weeks due to coronavirus. So if I understand correctly, it's difficult to identify, but the value is there. Therefore, let's make use of the specialist that has got access to better information.
Correct.
Perfect. I thank you guys. I thank everybody for their time. We are 2 minutes ahead of schedule. Have a look at the email address. Connect with us via Facebook. If you'd like more time with Stephen, Dare to Be Coaching, we've got his information available. If you want more in-depth discussions on just regulation and retrenchment, or you've got specific examples that you want us to work on, that's all on the table. So I thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye. Wie is nog